and then they put this baby on me and they're like trying to get her to latch, and I'm like, oh shit, like now I have to look after this baby for like the next 18 years. Like,
Yeah.
what? I kind of thought I was gonna like have a nap.
Why do you parent like that?
Before we jump into today's episode, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Bear and Moo for their support of Why Do You Parent Like That? It honestly means so much to have a brand believe in this podcast and the stories we're sharing here right from the beginning. When you support Bear and Moo, whether it's their gorgeous reusable nappies, practical kids clothing, or all the everyday essentials they offer, you're also supporting the podcast and helping us keep these conversations going. So please head onto their website, find something beautiful, and use code WDYPLT10 at checkout. That's WDYPLT10 at checkout for a 10% discount on any non-sale items. Thank you, Bear and Moo. You are truly the best. Holy moly, you guys. This episode just reinforced to me how grateful I am to have started this podcast. Talking to Renata was so rad. She is breaking all of the glass ceilings and holding out her hand to bring other working mums with her, and it was so cool to chat to her about it. Renata is passionate, generous, and values-led, and I hope that listening to this episode makes you all go and download the Roam with Kids app. Not only because it's a lifesaver of an app for parents, and I can attest to that, but because the person behind it is paving the way for mums in business. As per usual, please subscribe, rate, and review. The powers that be really seem to push out the podcasts that get that kind of engagement. And if you're feeling really wild, maybe you could share this episode to your social media. Thank you for being here, and I hope you love this episode as much as I loved making it.
Why do you parent like that?
My guest today is someone who has turned the challenges of finding child-friendly spots into an art form. Renata Wiles, known online as Renata Roaming, is the founder of Roam with Kids, an app that takes the guesswork out of family outings. Whether you're hunting for a playground that won't leave you questioning your life choices, a cafe where both the coffee and the high chairs are top-notch, or a weekend event that won't end in a full-blown toddler meltdown, Renata's got you covered. And here's the kicker, she started building this app at 37 weeks pregnant, with no prior experience in the tech world, just sheer determination, a pregnant brain, and a brilliant idea. Since then, she's created a go-to resource for parents across Aotearoa, and this week alone, she's been nominated for multiple Girls in Business Awards, no big deal. Renata's work is a beautiful blend of practicality and passion, helping parents explore their cities, connect with their communities, and maybe even enjoy a coffee while it's still hot. Renata Wiles, welcome to Why Do You Parent Like That?
Thanks. What an intro. Gosh, that was. You make me sound like I've done quite a lot.
Yeah, well, you have done quite a lot. I don't know if you
Thanks
know
for
this, but like, you're quite impressive.
Oh, yeah, I think it's that classic Kiwi imposter syndrome, right? That in combination of just being a woman, like always
Yep.
downplaying what we've done. But yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast.
No, it's so nice to have you. And as someone, I have recently downloaded your app because my toddler's at the age where he's dropped his naps in the weekend. And so we're like definitely trying to find things to do a lot more. And we've moved into a new area as well. So trying to find things to do in the weekend, events especially, and having your app to just be like, what's happening, what's not going to cost us too much, where's a playground that has a fence so I can sit down, like, so good. It's such a great app, and I cannot believe there was nothing like it before. It's really filled a gap, so.
Thanks. I mean, I'm obviously biased, but I think it's really cool. And I love hearing those stories of people actually using it and finding it helpful. That's my 11-month-old in the background, if you can hear him.
Oh yes, we are a child-friendly podcast here at Why Do You Parent Like That? So if you hear baby noises in the background, that's because we are parents, so.
Yeah, no, I love hearing stories of people using it, like finding events to go to, like a cool new favorite playground or favorite cafe to go to. I think there are so many epic spots, and like, how else do you find out about them? You know, it's all word of mouth, and so we're just kind of putting that all together in one spot, and so hopefully saving people's, saving parents and caregivers sanity a little bit.
Definitely. Do you want to like give us just like a brief overview of how you came to create the app? Like, I know a few people, if they follow you, will have heard this story, but for new listeners or people who haven't met you on the internet yet, tell us the story.
Yeah, sure. So I was, I guess like I've always had this desire to do something a bit different. I have like, a very busy brain, and I'm always kind of searching for like new challenges. I've always loved the idea of doing my own thing, not working in traditional 9 to 5. So I guess like the context is that like in the background, I've always had this kind of, what could I do, like mindset or whatever. And so I guess that's why like content creation and that kind of thing was like really appealing to me to kind of pursue that. And I basically, like, when my daughter was around like 2.5, I was a stay-at-home mum with her, and we
Uh-huh.
were getting out and about like every day and going to places. I described myself at the time as a stay-at-home mum who's never at home. And it was like we were just always going and doing stuff. And then I started sharing these recommendations on social media, TikTok and Instagram, and people like really resonated with like wanting to go new places and wanting to find
Mm.
cool places that they would enjoy as much as their kids. And so really the focus to begin with was like cafes and super cool playgrounds. And then it just kind of like morphed and developed, and I kind of got this like more of a community following me along, and more people wanting recommendations, and people were messaging me and saying like, where do you recommend in this area, like where do you recommend in this area? And I couldn't keep on top of all the DMs that I was getting, and I couldn't act as this like personal assistant to all
Yeah.
of the parents in Auckland. And so I ended up teaching myself how to build a Google map that I could sell, and so it had like all of my recommendations consolidated into one place with like notes, and I was selling that for $20. And it was like you just had access to like this Google, it was like a Google map overlay, so you could open it in your phone in Google Maps, and all the
Cool.
pins would be there, and then they had notes for like what I had written about the spot. That was really cool, and that was like selling quite well, and I was just getting more people following me and more people buying it. And then I had this idea that I really wanted to turn it into an app, and I remember I was on holiday with my family, and I have this idea and I really want to build this app, but I like don't know how to do it. It seems really expensive, and I was pregnant at the time, and I was like this all feels really too hard basket. And then, purely like the most perfect timing ever, a developer whose wife followed me reached out to me and were like, we would love to turn this into an app. Like, have you ever thought about it? Would you be keen? And initially
Mm.
I thought they just wanted to take the idea and make it themselves. And so I was like quite skeptical and like protective of the idea, because I had the
Mm.
idea, but not really like the knowledge to build an app. And
Mm.
yeah, it was like we met up with them a few times. They have a daughter the same age as ours, made a few play dates, and like they're really awesome. And we were like, cool, we could make this work. Yeah, like teamed up, I guess.
Cool.
He does all the development stuff, and I basically gave him like shares in the company in exchange for his work on building the app and doing like the kind of updates and the tech side of things. And yeah, I do everything else. And that's
Cool.
kind of
That's
like
so cool.
how it came to be.
Yeah. And now it's like truly taking New Zealand by storm. Like
Well,
truly.
hopefully, yeah. Because when we launched just with Auckland, and that's been one of like the hardest things, is figuring out how to expand outside of Auckland. And so I'm working with local mums across New Zealand. So we've got like two mums in Christchurch that I work with really closely. I've got a mum in Wellington, just like building up this network of mums who can be on the ground kind of checking places. And yeah, and that's been how we've been scaling so far and trying to cover more places. And we've been going to places as well to kind of create content for them and things. So it's been
Yeah.
definitely a journey, because I have no business background and no tech background. It's been, yeah, quite some, even at the moment, it's like end of financial year, and I'm having to do my taxes. And I'm just like, I don't know how to do taxes.
I
This
know.
is,
I saw
like
your TikTok this morning and I was like, oh no, if I ever get to that stage, I'm going to feel exactly the same.
yeah. And it's like, I feel like every day there are new business things where I'm like, oh, how do I do this?
Yeah. Yeah. And how have you found that balance of like learning literally like two whole new really industries while being a parent of like two young children, one of them like under 1 year old while you were doing this?
This is literally the juggle when you're like, how do you find it? It's like this, you're trying
Yeah.
to multitask all the time. And it's definitely been really hard. I think that I have, to give myself a bit of credit, I think I have a huge capacity for doing hard things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I run on very little sleep. I'm like very driven and motivated, and I work really hard. And it's kind of like cringe to say that about yourself, especially in New Zealand where we have this tall poppy syndrome. And,
Yeah.
like as a woman in general, it's really hard to talk about things that you're like your strengths or things that you think you're good at. But something that I think that I am good at is like, I'm really determined, I'm really motivated, and I just have a huge capacity to like do a lot.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
I also just like have a real belief that like everything is figure outable. And so whether it's like, oh, I want to build a website, oh, I want to like build this map that I can sell, I want to learn how to take payments online, I want to learn how to, create content for social media, I want to learn about email
Mm.
marketing. It's like everything is figure outable, not necessarily to like a very high standard, but to a standard that's like good enough to kind of
To
move on to the next
start.
thing. And I hugely, hugely embrace the idea that done is better than perfect. Nothing that I do, I would say, is perfect right now. Maybe one day, but right now in this season of life, like I am not doing anything perfectly. I'm like getting it done and I'm moving on to the next thing. And that is
Yeah.
probably the only way to move forward and to keep like growing, because I know a lot of people who want to start businesses, but they want everything to be perfect. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that really slows you down because you don't have the time when you're trying to juggle running a business and raising kids. Like, just get it done and move on to the next thing, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of the philosophy at the moment.
That's how I felt even starting this podcast. I've had the idea for this podcast for a really long time, and I've spent
Yeah.
so much time like tool poppying myself. So being like, why do you think your voice is important? You know, like that negative self talk. So it's been a lot to just be like, why not me? I'll get over it.
Yeah.
And also like figuring all of this stuff out, like production, tech, editing, blah, 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 like content, reels, everything.
Yeah.
I think for so long I was like, I can't do any of that very well, but I'm learning now that like, just get it out there. You know, no
Yeah.
one's expecting it to be perfect. If they want perfection, they're not going to be into it, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
people will
And
find
also
it and
like the
resonate with it.
Totally. And I also think that like all of the successful people in business and in the world are the people who have just like put it out there. Like they always say, like launch with your like minimum viable product, like the most
Yeah.
basic version of. And if I look at the app when it first launched versus what it is like now, they are like two completely different products. We launched and it was like the colors were weird, like things were in weird places. We didn't have some functionality. We thought it was great at the time, but it was very much like the most basic version of the app to get it out there that we
Mm.
could launch. And then you go back and you're like, okay, now we're going to improve on this. Now we're going to focus on this. Now
Yeah.
we're going to make this better, you know? And I think I was talking to a friend about this morning, and she really wants to make a Shopify site and start selling some of her prints and things. And she's like really nervous. And I was like, you have nothing to lose. Like if it doesn't work out, you will end up exactly where you are right now.
Yeah.
Like, like for the perspective, it's like you have nothing to lose. See what happens. If it doesn't work out, you're going to be literally right where you are now. And at least you can say that you
Hmm.
tried. So I don't know. I'm like a big ambassador for people just getting past that kind of like initial fear and going for it.
Yeah. I was talking to, I don't know if you know Cassidy Skelton, the online TikTok creator, Cassidy and
I
Nick.
have seen some of her videos. Yeah.
Yeah, so she and I grew up together, and when I had this idea, I like voice messaged her and was like, I don't know, I'm thinking about doing this and I'm not sure, not too sure. And she was just like, just do it, just start. Like,
Yeah.
just do it. Don't give yourself time to second guess yourself, just do it.
Yeah.
And that was like
Totally.
the best possible advice I could have got, because literally within a week, I was like, had like created it all, released the first episode, and now I'm like, okay, great, I'm doing it. And it's like, I
Yeah.
spent so much time going back and forth, and I could have just been doing it this whole time.
Totally. And the only way to get better at stuff is to do it. It's
Mm.
like if you want to be better at creating content, create more content. If you want to be better at running marathons, go for more runs. Like the only way to
Yes.
get better at something is to do it. You just got to start.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I just think it's like so cool. I just love when we can see mums, like visibly see mums doing things, being great parents, but also doing these things that are really fulfilling to them and making things work for them. Because this is no news to anyone, but I don't think society is really set up for mums to thrive right now. And so I think
Totally.
like finding space and ways that you're fulfilled, you're like financially looking after your family, like I just think it's really cool seeing mums buck the trend. And I also think if we're not seeing people do that, then like we're not going to have the motivation or like hope that we can do it ourselves. And so basically
Mm.
just you're a trailblazer and I love it. So well done.
I think it's like we're all just, feeling the same, and we're all just having to like make it more possible for the like women that come after us. Do you know what I mean? And last year
Hmm.
you mentioned like I've just been nominated, or I'm a finalist for one of the Girls in Business Awards. Last year I went to that conference. I just launched my business. My baby was 3 months old. And, I probably shouldn't say this, but it said on the website like children are not allowed. And I was like, well, I'm going, and I've bought a ticket, and the ticket is non-refundable, and the tickets are like $200, they're not cheap. And I was like, I'm going to
Mm,
this event. I've just had a baby. He can't be away from me. He's only 3 months old. He's exclusively breastfed. There's no way. It was a whole day event,
yeah.
And I was like, this is an event for girls in business. Like all of the people in here are like a daughter. Probably a lot of them are mothers. They're all going to know somebody who has kids. Like if you
A lot
can't
of them
take
will
your
be
baby
thinking
to
about
this,
becoming mothers and like looking at
yeah, like
how
if you
that's going
can't
to
take your
work with
baby
their
to this
business.
environment, what message does that send? If you can't take your baby, it's like you can be a girl in business, but you cannot also be a mother. And so I took him and I definitely got a few. I was like worried that I wasn't going to get in, that they were going to kick me out. And there was one other mum that I spoke to and she was like, "Oh my God, like you brought your baby." I was like, "Yeah, I know, like, oops." And she was like, "Oh, I emailed them to ask if I could bring mine. He's like 6 months old and they said I wasn't allowed to, you know." And I was like, so I'm so sorry, like I felt guilty somehow, but
Ask
he just
forgiveness,
slipped in
not
the wrap and
permission.
it was like fine. And now it's like this full circle. I'm going to be going back there again this year without my baby, hopefully, but as a finalist in one of the awards. And
Yeah.
it's just like, I don't know, it is really hard, even going to spaces designed for women in business. It is hard to be a mother in those spaces. So
Yeah.
I also started my own mums in business group, which you're welcome to come along to because now you have a business, you got the podcast.
Thanks. I
But
know. Crazy.
yeah, we meet on the first Friday of the month, and it's like the kids can come, the babies can be there. It's like you can show up as a mum and also talk about business, because I find that a
Mm,
lot of the time the only spaces for mums are like mums groups. And
yeah.
I personally don't love going to and talking about like sleep schedules and like how many wet nappies are they having and
Yeah.
like when are you starting solids, like all of that chat. It's like maybe as a first time mum, I was more into it, but definitely now in the season of life, that doesn't fill my cup to go and have those connections. I want to go and talk to other mums who are in the same situation as me, like, oh, we're really tired and we're trying to run a business, and that's
Mm,
also really hard. And it's like you're connecting on a different level. And but there's not enough spaces like that for mums who are working. There are spaces
no.
like that for mums who are stay-at-home mums, and there are spaces for women in business. But the mums in business, it's like they're not. There's no anyway. This is like
Yeah.
kind of off topic, but yeah, I started a group, and it has become one of like the highlights of my month, meeting with those mums and just talking about business and stuff.
It's so good. And like, just as we're talking, I'm becoming even more conscious that mums are quite, and I don't know if this is because like society expects us to just be at home or what it is, but there is no allowance for mums starting businesses. Like, you can be a working mum, you can have a prescribed career in your 9 to 5, and there's space for you in there because your child's in, traditional childcare, and
Mm.
that's all fine. But it's the mums that are like, I'm wanting to start something, but I'm also got my kids at home with me. That's a really tricky crossover that actually there's not a lot of room for. So the fact that you're kind of creating the room is very cool.
It's also things like even like parental leave payments, you can't earn
Yeah.
any income when you're on parental payments. And so when I went on maternity leave, launched my business like 2 weeks later, and then had a baby like the week later. And the kind of idea was like, while I'm on maternity leave, I want to be, like building this business, and I wanted to be doing like
Mm,
some content creation and keep things going and be earning some money from these things. But you're not allowed to earn any money while you're getting statutory maternity pay. And so
uh-huh.
even that, it's like that's not set up for mums, because if you want to be able to set up something so that when your pay ends at the end of 6 months, you've got something to continue on with, you can't. And so it's like even those policies, I feel like they're designed to keep mums as like, I don't want to say like second class citizens, but like really
Yeah.
it's to screw mums over and to stop you from being able to, use that time to like do anything that might get you ahead of the game or whatever. 6 months
Yeah.
of parental leave payments is not enough. And then the payments
No.
stop at 6 months, and your choices are like, oh, okay, so now you either need to like have a load of savings to support yourself for another 6 months and go back to work at 12 months, or you go back to work at 6 months and you put your baby into daycare full time. Like it just makes no sense to me. And I was just thinking the
Yeah.
whole time I was on the 6 months and I couldn't earn any money. And I was like, every month that I'm not earning any money, my business is getting like disadvantaged. Like there's less chance that I'm going to have a successful business to come back to because I'm having to put everything on pause. It's just like a whole thing. And I think, I think you spoke to Sophie as well. And something that she always says that I love is like parenting is political. And like it really truly is, because these issues around like parental leave payments, being able to start a business while you're, on maternity leave, all of these things are political issues, right? And they affect how we
Yeah.
parent, they affect the choices that we make, they affect when our kids go into daycare or don't go into daycare, they affect so many things. And so,
And
yeah,
they're
I think
baked
it's
into
like,
policies. They're baked into our government. They're baked into our
mm,
laws. Like, you
yeah,
can't say that it's not coming from like a societal place when it's literally in government. They are
yeah.
making laws that are actively discouraging mums from entering into business or making money for themselves whilst
Yeah.
also looking after kids.
And,
Yeah. But hey, people talking about it is what's going to make a difference. And like, I don't
yeah.
know. One day the laws will change, and it will be because our generation of mums are the ones who will bring it to the attention. All we can hope is that for our daughters, they're not going to encounter these roadblocks. So
Mm.
we'll
I
just
heard
keep
this great,
chugging
I heard
away.
this great, I heard this great quote that was like, when you're, becoming more successful in your career, bring a ladder so that or you can like all the women that come behind you can climb up. That's like not how this quote went. That's a
But
terrible.
I know. Yeah, I get the paraphrase. I'm picking up what you're
Yeah, yeah,
putting
yeah.
down.
Yes. So that's kind of something I think about a lot. Is it's like
Yeah.
as I'm, growing and becoming more successful, and that's why it's like I really love being able to work with other mums, and I'd really love to be
Yeah.
able to employ more mums. And I've got one mum who works for me as a contractor at the moment. She's like an admin kind of assistant, and she's a stay-at-home mum. And it's like being able to kind of give her enough income that she can continue to stay home with her 2.5-year-old. It's like, yeah, yeah.
That's
There's
the
this other
dream. That's so cool.
yeah, and there's this other quote that I love. It always comes out around, and or like stat. It always comes out around International Women's Day. But when women earn more, society as a whole benefits more. Like our charitable giving increases um, with our income, like is direct proportion to our income. Whereas when men earn more,
Interesting.
their charitable giving doesn't increase, and society as a whole doesn't benefit anymore. They just hoard more wealth for themselves. But when women earn more, they spread that more. So I really hope that I can like really embody that as well.
Yeah, that's so cool. I do, yeah. Just the idea that they're gonna like as women are earning more, there's gonna be way more values-based businesses is sick. Like that's so cool. And only,
Yeah.
yeah, like you say, only beneficial. No downside. No downside, guys.
Totally.
I've been thinking about this a lot because for listeners, the online magazine Capsule have been doing a really good series about the motherhood penalty.
Mm,
And I've been thinking about this a lot at the moment, just in terms of like, and I think we're discouraged to think about it because you're not meant to be ungrateful for having children, which I'm not ungrateful for having children, but I am acutely aware of the penalties that I have because I was the carrier, the person who gave birth, and the person who's staying at home versus my
yeah.
husband's experience. And like, even I had hyperemesis during pregnancy and I had to take heaps of time off work. And so even while I was at work, before my daughter was even born, I was giving up like training opportunities, upskilling opportunities, meetings of rooms that I would have loved to be in because
Mm,
I was carrying a baby. And I just think that it's like a conversation we need to be having a lot more. And so just a big shout out to that capsule sort of series that they're doing about the motherhood penalty at the moment
mm.
because it is like a very good read.
I think this is like probably controversial. Everything's controversial these days, but like, Chapel Roan just had that. She got a lot of press for
Yes.
saying, she doesn't know any mothers that are happy or whatever. And like, I've seen so many people, so many mothers being like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. It's the best thing ever. Like, I feel so sorry for her friends, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you guys are totally missing the point. She's shining a light on a conversation that needs to happen. She's giving us all the
Hmm.
opportunity to say, like, yeah, this is really hard. And it's not hard because of the
Hmm.
kids. It's hard because of the society we live in. It's hard because
Yeah.
we all have to go back to work. There's not enough paid parental leave. Daycare costs are extortionate. So even if you do want to
Uh-huh.
go back to work and your kids are going to daycare, like most of your pay is just going on, most
When
of your
I go
pay is
back
just
to
going on
work
daycare.
after maternity leave with my daughter right now, half of my pay will go to our daycare costs.
Yeah. It's
Half.
like we don't have enough support, we don't live in these villages. Mothers are just out there doing it by themselves. They're expected to do it all, she kind of said she said something that kind of got really bad press or really bad PR,
Mm,
but actually what she was saying was like a really important conversation. And I feel like so many mums have like missed the mark on being able to engage in that conversation now because they're so busy wanting to defend motherhood. And it's like, actually,
yeah.
it is really hard. And you give up your whole life for, however many years. Your kids are, always prioritized. You don't get to just do what you want. You don't get to sleep in. Your career does suffer. And as much as people are like, oh, no, you can still have a career and you can still do it all, it's like, can you though? Like
No.
you can't
Yeah.
really.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that she's had such bad backlash for what she said, and I just think it's such a shame because I think she's giving mothers an opportunity to be like, yes, this is really hard, not because of the kids, not because we don't want them, not because we don't love them, but because of the society we live in, and the society should change.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. I had a record with Sonia, who's the baby namer, yesterday, and we were talking about this comment, which will in podcast land that will have come out the week before this podcast, so listeners will have heard it about the week before as well. But this is like
Yeah.
it's such an interesting conversation. I'm so glad it's come up again. But I was saying this yesterday as well. Like I think everyone's misconstrued it as people being like motherhood, the act of motherhood is not worth it, but that's not true. Nobody's saying that. What we're saying is that like we're not setting mums up to live fulfilling lives
Mm,
and to have like well-being and to find balance because society's not set up like that. There's all these sacrifices
Yeah.
that we're having to make.
Even in like a
Yeah.
basic sense that like there isn't enough healthcare like research and stuff around giving birth, and like as soon as you get pregnant your chances of like all these terrible health related issues
Yeah.
increase, and so it's like you're putting your whole body on the line, and then you birth the baby, your body's changed like forever,
Yep.
and you lose your sense of self and you don't have time for yourself, and you're always prioritizing other people, and then it's like you're supposed to go back to work and just act like you're a man,
Your
like
everything hasn't changed.
yeah. I just think the whole thing's really sad. I see these posts coming up on social media being negative towards her for making those comments, and it's like, but is she wrong? Like, okay, it's not hell, but like for some people it is. Like, I think isn't suicide like the number one cause of
Yeah.
like suicide is the number one cause of maternal like death,
Death in New
the first year
Zealand.
postpartum or something.
Yeah.
For some people, it is absolutely the most like hard, awful experience. And let's not pretend that it's just like butterflies and roses and rainbows all the time. Do you know what I mean?
And even things like domestic violence rates increase while you're pregnant. You've got more chance of being a victim of domestic violence while you're pregnant than if you're not
Yeah.
pregnant. And so it's like all of these things, we're acting like it's this beautiful life change. And it is like, oh my gosh, the huge caveat here is that I love being a mum. I love my children, blah, 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 all of that. Would never choose anything else. But I think that by acting like these risks aren't real and these like negative outcomes aren't real, I think we're just like sweeping it under the rug, playing make believe. I feel like we're cutting ourselves off at the ankles by not talking about it because we're not making things more equitable for mums. It's like we need to
Yeah.
see that these outcomes are very real potential outcomes for people who are pregnant and be
Mm.
like, okay, well, how do we find the balance as a
Yeah.
society to make sure that they're getting propped up for the sacrifice they're making for the continuation of our species, by the way?
Yeah. And I also think that it's like, those kind of conversations also often like, there's this expectation that like mums do it all. And I really like don't agree with that or support that. And like I have a very equal partnership with my partner Josh. Like he does
Uh,
so much of the like domestic labor and then carrying the mental load, sharing the mental load, parenting, all of these things. And it shocks me when I hear that people don't have that. Like when I hear stories of like mums who go to work, do the majority of the childcare, carry the mental load, also do like all the shopping, all the cleaning, all the cooking. I'm just like,
I
how
know.
have you not had a mental breakdown? Like, how is that a normalized thing in society? How does anybody look at that and think that that is okay? Like, this idea that like the dads go off to work and that's their contribution and the mums, I don't know. I'm just like, it doesn't make sense to me because
I
that is not
agree.
how our family does things.
And then I
It is not
also
how,
hate that there's like now that there's that stereotype for women who are in like their 50s and 60s that they're like really uptight and bitter and like jaded. And I'm like, yeah, of course women are bitter and jaded by the time they get to that point because they've completely burnt themselves out and
yeah,
nobody's allowing them to like give them praise for what they've done and say, oh my gosh,
yeah,
you've done an amazing job there, but two, like have a rest or a break or relax, because
yeah,
then they turn around and become grandmothers and they're expected to show up for their daughters and their sons and be a huge like quintessential part of the village there. So it's like it just feels
yeah,
like the expectation for women never stops, and it feels like the expectation is never there for men.
yeah,
And I'm really glad that's
totally.
changing, but it's still deeply ingrained in society.
It's interesting because like we went out somewhere recently and I can't remember where we were, but we were talking to these mums and we like didn't know them. We were talking about all the stuff, and then Josh was like, he mentions like, oh, he does the shopping and the cooking. Like these mums were like, oh my god, wow, that's like so amazing, like really like praising him like on, I would say like over the top, like he is amazing. And they were like, does Renata do all the cleaning? He was like, no, I like do most of the cleaning as well. And these mums were like, oh my God, you're like a unicorn partner. Like, this is so crazy. And it's like, you would never say that to a mum. If a mum was like, I
No.
do all the cooking and I do all the cleaning, you would never say to that mum, oh my God, you're like a
You're
unicorn
a
mum.
unicorn.
Your partner is so lucky to have you. You would never, it would be like, oh yeah, you're a mum. Like,
Yeah.
but when a guy does it, we're like, oh my God, you're so lucky to have that like person doing all of that things. And I just really like, it's so difficult because I'm so grateful for him because I know that that is not everyone's experience and he is amazing. He
Yeah.
does so much. But I simultaneously like really struggle with this like cultural societal norm that is worth praising rather than just being what all partnerships should deserve, like both
Yeah.
people doing things. So it's very tricky.
I think the social worker in me is like, all I want is for everyone to get the praise that they deserve. I'm like, yes, praise, great dads because they deserve the celebration and they deserve to be supported, and like, yay for bucking the trends. And I love that this generation of dads is starting to step up. But I'm also like, on the flip side of that, we also need to give that exact same energy to mums. I'm like, I want
we
it to be,
absolutely don't.
yeah, exactly. I want it to be as normal to see a great mum doing, like, just being a good mum out in public and be like, you are doing such a good job. Like, those kids look so happy. The way that my amazing partner gets when he's out with our kids. Like, I wish that that happened to me, but no, that's the expectation. But when he's out and about with them and like being loving and hands on, like he is, and like that's my expectation for him because that's why I chose him to be the father of my children,
Totally.
that he would get that. And
Yeah.
it just, drives me a little bit nuts. And I can tell that it drives you nuts too. But I'm like really hopeful that it's changing.
Yeah, I think that we have a daughter and a son, and I think that they are both growing up in a house, seeing what a true partnership looks like, and
Yeah,
seeing a dad that does the cooking, that does the shopping, that helps with the cleaning, and does all of these things, that looks after the kids. He's not babysitting, and that's the kind of best change, hopefully, that we can make, is like that
agreed.
he's role modeling to our kids, men do all these things too, and that it's not just on the mum to do everything. And
Yeah,
then they're going to grow up, and then they're going to seek out partners that, reflect that. Like, our son will grow up knowing that he helps around the house, he cooks, he
yeah.
cleans, he does all these things. And our daughter will grow up and not settle for somebody who expects that she does all of these things.
My in-laws are actually like, they have always been a very equal partnership in terms of my father-in-law has always done cooking, cleaning, laundry. He has done lots of the very traditional feminine roles, and they are both in the boomer generation. And so that's like quite, I can only assume now on reflection, quite countercultural for them. But it means that my husband, when we got married and when we had kids, he was so like, he never even questioned that he would be cooking. He never questioned he would be going to the supermarket or cleaning or tidying. Like, all those things were just
Yeah.
instilled in him. And it was so amazing to not have to like teach my partner the way that I've seen other people have to teach their partner to contribute to the load. We'll jump right on in. The first question is, tell me about your journey to becoming a parent.
So my journey to becoming a parent was a surprise and unexpected. I was moving back from the UK to New Zealand with my partner. We had really cool careers over there. We thought we were going to come back and get really cool careers here. And we were traveling through India for 3 months en route back. And we found out we were pregnant, which was a big surprise. And
Oh my gosh,
decided to
where in
just come.
India were you?
We were in Rishikesh. So it was like the most beautiful place to find out, like on the Ganges. It was just like really, really lovely, but very unexpected. And we decided just to come straight back to New Zealand and cut our trip short. And thank goodness we did, because COVID happened and we would have got stuck in India if we had stayed. So
Oh,
yeah, it all like worked out for the best. And then we came back, and it's like, it wasn't the motherhood pregnancy experience that I thought. I thought I would be like working. I thought I would have an income. I thought I'd be going for like pregnancy massages and being, buying cute nursery furniture and all of that. And yeah, I was unemployed. It was COVID. We were in and out of lockdowns. We were living with my mum, and we moved out from living with her at like 36 weeks pregnant or something. And we were on
wow.
Waiheke. And then we moved to be on the mainland, and I had to change midwives and stuff. And it was all just like quite stressful. Really like not the experience that I thought. And then, had quite a difficult experience with like sleep deprivation first time round. Took us 3 years to consider trying again, and we weren't sure how long it would take us. And in our mind, we thought like 4 to 5 years was kind of like our ideal age gap. And so when my daughter turned 3, we started trying for a second. We were very on the fence for ages. We thought we could just be like one and done. Yeah, we started trying when she turned 3, and then like very, very, very luckily, like I appreciate how fortunate we are, we got pregnant the first month. Yeah, and so then had my son, and we have, yeah, like a almost 4 year age gap, 3 years and 9 months, which is so good. I love it. It's just like the perfect age gap.
Nice. Yeah, just for the listeners' sake, I have just run upstairs and grabbed my baby who has woken up. So Max is now joining us. This is Max's first podcast. Everyone say hi, Max. What was your like feeding, sleeping, those kind of like really early days? What was that like for both for you?
So I had like opposite experiences with both babies, which really reinforced for me that it's very little to do with you and very much to do with them. But
I'm
my
having that
daughter,
experience as we speak between my two
yeah,
children.
yeah, I didn't have I didn't really have a difficult breastfeeding journey with my first, I was very kind of fortunate that, there were like the normal kind of teething problems of like your milk coming in and engorgement and getting the latch
Hmm.
right and painful nipples and all of that. But like for the most part, it was totally fine. And I fed her until she was 2.5. And
Amazing.
we had no breastfeeding problems. I really loved it until I didn't love it anymore. And then we stopped. And her sleep was absolutely horrific. Just
No.
such a low sleep needs child, and she still is now. Like still now, her sleep is at a as a 4.5-year-old. She's just an early riser. She dropped her nap really early.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she was just a very wakeful baby, and I really struggled with that as a first time mum because you're marketed this idea that they sleep well, or that at 6 months you put them in a cot in their own room and they're going to sleep through the night or something. And so I
Yeah.
really had a hard time. And everywhere that I looked for support, the answer seemed to be like sleep training or a sleep consultant. And I personally didn't want to go down that route. And so I just felt like so alone in my experience because yeah, we're really like marketed that they should be sleeping. And if they're not, that's a problem. And then the second time around with my son, I've had the opposite where he is like a pretty good sleeper. So like my daughter never ever slept in the pram and she never slept in the car, whereas he will sleep in the car. Like if I'm sitting next to him and I'm like stroking his forehead, he'll fall asleep in the car, where she would have never done that. He
Yeah.
does sleep in the pram as well, so like I can get out for a walk in the morning and do his morning nap while I'm walking and he's sleeping in the pram, and for my mental health that is like amazing. Yeah, so my son has been a really good sleeper, so I've had like the opposite experience in the sense that when I say like a good sleeper, I mean he still probably wakes every like 2 hours overnight and his naps can still be short. But we also took a totally different approach this time, where we didn't try and put him in a cot or make him sleep on his own. So with my daughter, I was like getting up out of bed, walking to her room, trying to resettle her, putting her back down,
Yeah.
walking back to my room, falling asleep for like 45 minutes, being woken up again, going through the whole thing.
Rinse and
Whereas like
repeat.
this time around, we were like, we're not doing that. So we started co-sleeping with my daughter when she was 9 months old, and with my baby, we've just basically done it from like
Beginning.
pretty much like not day one, but pretty much, from when he was a newborn. And it's
Nice.
just amazing because it's like, he wakes up, I roll over and feed him, he falls asleep, we both go back. I don't have to wait, I don't have to open my eyes, I don't have to stand up. It's just like so restful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so lovely. I've talked about this with a few people on this podcast that co-sleeping can just be like the most beautiful tool in the whole entire world for parenting. And
Yeah.
it's a real shame that it's not educated about a lot more in New Zealand.
I don't think I would be able to get anything done if I didn't, like if I wasn't getting sleep, like the first time around with my daughter, I wouldn't be able to, function. But on the
Mm.
flip side, like, with my daughter, I'd had this really easy breastfeeding experience. And with my son, we had a really difficult breastfeeding experience. And I haven't actually spoken about this before, but it was like very hard. He has like a health condition where feeding can be quite tricky for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like to do with his breathing, and so they struggle to like feed and breathe.
Mm.
And his latch was really not good, and we got him checked for like a tongue tie, and we took him to baby, the baby osteo, and they do all the things that they do, and we tried like everything. I went to multiple like lactation consultants, and I ended up, after probably seeing like 4 different lactation consultants, I ended up just having to use nipple shields, and
Yeah.
I was using them for like probably like 4 months, and I felt so depressed about it because I'd had this beautiful
Mm.
breastfeeding experience with my daughter where I breastfed her for such a long time, and it was this really like lovely bonding thing. And now I was feeding my like newborn baby, and there was this piece of plastic between us, which didn't feel great. And I was really worried that it would like cut our breastfeeding journey shorter than what I hoped for.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was like the kind of a very different experience. And it was definitely a very different experience. And yeah, I kind of struggled with it, but we persevered, and, eventually were able to get off the nipple shield. Around like 4 or 5 months, I kind of got off the nipple shield fully, and yeah, still breastfeeding him now. He's not as good, like he's not as good of a feeder as my daughter was, and so it's still been a
Yeah.
different experience. Like he doesn't feed to sleep really because his latch is because he struggles with his latch and his breathing and stuff. He doesn't often just like feed and then fall asleep, which she would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feed him to sleep very often, which is a totally different experience, but good sleeper. So it's just, it's
Different
like,
kids, eh?
yeah,
Different
yeah,
kids are
yeah. And
different
it's,
humans.
yeah. And I remember like when I was first struggling with breastfeeding him, and so many people, and I was like, but I didn't have any problems with my daughter. I fed her for like 2 years, and everyone was like, yeah, but this isn't your daughter, you know? And it was like,
Mm.
yeah, this is a different baby. Like, we're going to have a different experience. And so I think it really drilled home for me that it's like very little to do with you and, a lot to do with them.
Which I think is quite a freeing idea. Like, I'm having this
Yeah.
realization as well. Two very different babies. My daughter is very different from my son. And I think it's like actually quite freeing to be like, actually, I'm going to show up
Yeah.
and I'm going to meet their needs and I'm going to, like, I'm
Yeah.
going to be a responsive parent. But at the end of the day, like, they're going to be who they're going to be. And
Yeah.
that's quite nice.
Yeah, I think especially with sleep because it was just I have such bad like PTSD almost from sleep with my daughter, and like the validation of knowing that like I've done everything the same and he's just he's a different baby and he sleeps really well. It's like I worried so much like did I do something wrong? Like should I have sleep trained or whatever? And now seeing what it's like to have a baby that has different sleep needs is very I don't know like validating somehow or just like reassuring or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice. I guess on that note, what does gold standard parenting mean or look like to you?
I would say that it looks like great marketing, and there is literally no such thing. There is no like gold standard for any aspect of parenting. And the only reason why you would think that there was is because of marketing. Like somebody
Agreed.
wants to sell you a product. So yeah, I just think it's like there are so many ways to do everything. And there's definitely no one right or wrong way. Like every single baby is an individual person in the world who has like their own unique needs, and you have your own unique needs and preferences. And yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that very well.
No,
I
I
basically I don't
like
think there is a gold standard.
Yeah, I sort of ask it in an inflammatory way because I know that there's no like right answer to that question. There is no gold standard, but I do think that we get instilled with these ideas of like what we think gold standard is, and then often that changes when we become parents. Like I think that for me personally, there was a real big shift between like what I thought I was going to be like and what I actually am like, and then what my like measures of a good day or a successful day are in those like within those parameters. So that's sort of like I am thinking about changing the wording of that question just because I'm like, maybe it's like a little bit too inflammatory, but we'll
Well,
see.
no, I think it's like it does shine a light on the fact that I think before you have kids, you probably think there is like a best way to do things, a
Mm,
best way to approach each a best way to even, as a first time mum, I probably thought like baby led weaning is the best way to introduce
yeah,
solids. And now as a second time mum, I'm like, that's such a load of crap. Like
yeah,
you do what works for you and what works for your family and, within reason. Like,
yeah.
yeah. I don't know. There is no best way though. And I think, there's so much pressure, especially on first time parents. There's like so much pressure to do things a certain way or to do things. I think that especially as a first time, before you have kids, and especially as a first time parent, it's really easy to think that like you're doing things wrong. And it's,
Mm,
whenever you think like, am I doing this wrong? I always stop now and think like, financially benefits by me thinking that I'm doing this wrong. And if there's an answer
yeah,
to that question, it's like, oh, so I'm not actually doing it wrong then. They're just wanting to sell me
that's just
something.
capitalism. Yeah.
Yeah. There is no gold standard.
And then I guess like following on from that, it's quite a nice like feeder question into what is something about your parenting style, the way that you parent that feels unique or unique-ish to you.
I would say that I am incredibly fortunate to now have surrounded myself with so many people that parent in a very similar way to me. And maybe that's unique. Maybe it's unique to have, so many people in your life that parent in the same way as you, but nothing that I do feels particularly unique. I mean, maybe the fact that I'm like trying to run a business and have, be a full-time parent is perhaps
Yeah,
unique, but
maybe the fact that you started an app at 37 weeks pregnant.
yeah, I mean the work stuff is probably unique. That is like probably the
Yeah.
most unique thing about my situation. But the way that I approach like parenting in general, the way I approach sleeping and feeding and like prioritizing time in nature and attachment parenting and gentle parenting and all of these different things, we try to be really respectful of our kids and try and include them in like decisions that we're making and
Hmm.
I don't know, all of these things that we do that they're specific to us are not I wouldn't say are unique to us. We're very fortunate that like now over the course of my daughter's 4.5, so over the last 4.5 years, I've kind of gravitated towards people who parent in similar ways to us. And
Yeah.
that's like really important for your mental health to be surrounded by people doing the same stuff as you. Like I do find it hard now, to be around people who are very, very different, if you talk about extreme ends of, the spectrum, um,
Mm,
about how they do things, because it's just like, like if I'm around somebody and they're like yelling at their child or something, I'm just like, this makes me
yeah.
really uncomfortable because this is so far away from how, I parent and stuff. So yeah, I don't think that there's that much unique about me, but that's because I'm so lucky to be surrounded by people who are all in the same journey, doing the same kind of things. For example, we co-sleep and so many of my friends co-sleep. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely not, that's not something that's unique about me. With my daughter, I probably would have said like, yeah, I feel like that is unique because I don't know anybody else who's co-sleeping. But now I know all my friends are
Everyone.
co-sleeping,
Yeah. Yeah. And was that something that you consciously did, like finding a village, or is that something that just like happened naturally over the course of your like parenting journey?
I think probably both. Like I would say that I've actively tried to seek out friendships with people who have kids at the same kind of like age and stage, whether it's through like coffee groups or, going regular and rhyme at the library or just like talking to parents at the park or whatever. And
Mm,
the parents that are more closely, the parents that parent more closely to how I parent, I guess we naturally click more. Like we have more to talk
yeah.
about, and the friendship comes easier. You're able to be more vulnerable because it's like, for example, if I've had a rough night and I'm co-sleeping, I will be much more likely to call a friend in the morning and be like, I had such a bad night. Like, I'm so tired, because they're going to be like, yeah, I totally get it. So you gravitate towards these friends that are kind of doing the same things as you, I guess. And
Mm,
I would say that with my first, I had a really great like coffee group, and I made some like really amazing friendships from that group. And I'd say the second time round, I've struggled to make friends in the same way because of the fact that I'm working so much.
yeah.
That has felt really, really difficult at times. And probably like I don't ever talk about this, but I often feel quite like lonely in a weird way because I have
Mm,
friends, but I don't have a lot of time to see them or hang out with them. And the time that I do have, I'm like with my family, obviously, or I'm working so much.
yeah.
And so, I mentioned at the beginning of this call, like I have this mums and business group and we meet once a month. And that's like the highlight of my month, meeting up with them and having those in person connections. And I try to organize through my work in person meetups, nature plays and different things. And we're about to do something for Mother's Day. And those in person things are so cut filling for me because I truly like live my life online. And I think people think
Mm,
like, but you have like this community online. And yeah, that is great. But living online is not the same as living in person. Do you know what I
yeah.
I mean?
Absolutely. That face to face connection, even just like feeling another person's energy in front of you is like such a
Yeah.
different feeling.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say, like, I think, having friends with babies the same age where you can just like hang out. Like I had a friend come over for a play date on Monday and she's got kids the same age as my kids. So the older kids played together and the babies crawled around on the floor and we were able to connect. And that is so cut filling to have those in person catch ups. But I don't have a huge amount of time this
To
time
make
around as
those
a second time
happen.
mum trying to run a business. Whereas the first time, as a first time mum, I think I was doing that like every single day. I never felt lonely. I felt my social cup was always full. Whereas now I feel like my
Mm,
social cup is always like, and also with being online, it's like there are some really beautiful friendships that I've made through like Instagram and TikTok and stuff, and some really great connections. The connections that have turned into like in person, real life friendships. But there is also a lot of negativity that I get
negativity.
online that can be really, if I'm sleep deprived and if I'm having a hard morning and I open up Instagram and I've got a message from somebody like having a go at me about something, or I open up TikTok and somebody's commented something negative on my videos, it's just like sometimes I'm like, what? Why am I doing this? Like, what is the point?
Yeah.
But the good stuff obviously outweighs the bad stuff. But yeah, it's like it can just be very lonely.
It's quite interesting to hear because I think from an outside perspective, without putting you up on too much of a pedestal, I think for someone following you, it could sometimes look like you have it all and that you have it sorted and balanced, and like it is quite appreciative of your vulnerability to hear that there is a space where you feel like it's lacking because of the sacrifices that you're making so that you can business and parent and do all those things. It is quite interesting to hear that there is a space in your life that you feel like there is a bit of having to
I just
sacrifice.
I try and say this. I haven't said it in a while, but I always try and say like social media is a highlight reel. Nobody
Mm,
has everything. Um, Nobody
sorted.
has a perfect life and nobody has
Yeah.
everything sorted. And also like you can't actually do everything at once. You can't
No.
have a great social life, exercise, look after your mental health, work a
Mm.
full-time job, parent, get enough sleep, see your friends, see your family,
Eat
read a book.
healthy.
Like you can't do all of these things. It's like you have to prioritize like in this season right now, what are the things I'm focusing on? And like for me right now, I'm focusing on my very young kids and I'm focusing on trying to get my business up and running. And
Yeah.
hopefully, as the kids get older and as the business grows and I can employ people to help me with stuff, that time for having a social life will like come again. And also, I'm really in a season where it's like, with my daughter, I got to the point where, like Josh could do everything for her. I could, go out for dinner. I could go and see friends. I could go away for a night. And so it was like really nice being able to go and like see friends for dinner, for example. And now I've got a really young baby. We've got two kids. I'm not away from him and I don't want to be away from him. And so things are just really different. Like I'm
Yeah.
not in that season of going out for dinner with friends. And I know that that will come again and I'll be able to go and see my friends and go out for dinner and have a social life and do more of those things. But right now it's just like really I'm very heavily focusing on like being with my kids and then also trying to like get my business up and running.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel
Embracing the
like
season you're in.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes I feel like, we were talking before about like if you try something and it doesn't work, you just end up where you started. And it's like I've now put so much of my like time and energy and my whole maternity leave has been spent on trying to get my business going. If it doesn't work out, like I often think like I wonder how that would feel because I've put everything into it and at
Yeah.
this time of my life where my kids are so young, so but then it's like then I remind myself like, oh, you just can't think like that, everything will be fine. So
And I think also like for your what a beautiful example for your kids in the future for them to be like, oh, what were you doing when I was on maternity, like when I was little, and
yeah,
you can be like, I was trying to start this business, and like in the future maybe it worked out and great, you built an empire by then, or maybe you can be like, and it didn't quite work out, but I was really proud of myself and I put my whole heart into it, and like having that role modeling for your kids is really awesome. Like that's great.
I hope so. I hope that they'll look at it and be like, "Wow, you're so cool. You started a business," and and not look at it and be like, "You were so busy and you were like always working." You're not that they'll. I mean, I don't always work
No.
when I'm with them,
And
but
even just
it's
through
like,
talking to you, like the decisions that you're making for intentional connection in terms of like co-sleeping, feeding to sleep, like all of those sorts of things, like I think whether you've done it consciously or not, or it's just like who you are as a parent, it looks like you're taking every opportunity to create bonds and connection, which I think would more than make up for the fact that like you're also working on a business. So I don't
I
think you're
hope
gonna have to
so.
worry about that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's like reassuring to hear. But yeah, it is sometimes, I don't know. I think every single parent can relate to this, but you just like question yourself and you have those worries of like, am I doing enough? And could I be doing a better job? And should I be, like with my daughter, we used to go to like Wriggle and Rhyme and baby sign language classes and swimming lessons. And I don't do
Yeah.
any of that stuff with my son. And so I often think like, am I doing enough for him? But I can't do any more than what I'm currently doing and also
Yeah.
be trying to run a business and stuff. The kind of compromises, it's like, well, I'm not doing as much as I did with her because I was a full-time mum with her and now I'm a full-time working mum. And
Yeah.
I'm doing the best that I can with having him home with me versus like him going into daycare so that I can be working because I work more than 40 hours a week on the app at the moment and
Yeah.
like social media and content creation and everything else that I'm doing. It is tricky.
I also
And
feel
I
like because
guess
I was the same with my oldest, I did all the things, and I think
yeah,
half of it was like because I did all the things with my coffee group. So I think half of it was like for me having that social connection, but it was an excuse that we were hanging out with our babies. But
yeah,
also it's like you're learning how to parent for the first time, and so having those opportunities throughout the week to be like, this happened last night, and this is happening today, and like that more regular check-in, which I feel like you kind of don't need second time round because you're just like a lot more confident as a parent second time round. So I feel like that
yeah.
need for that like constant group mentality is maybe like not quite so much there as it is the first time.
I do have a group this time round. So I joined Sophie's Imperfect Parents groups
I have too.
before she launched her like out of the city ones. They all live central and so they can meet up a lot easier. And it's great to have that like WhatsApp group of like people with babies the same age to be like,
Yes.
anyone like got advice around this or whatever. I think it's like finding people who live in like local to you, which is what I'm really starting to do now, is like finding a lot more mums that kind of live like, walking distance to me or like in the same kind of
Mm,
like suburb and stuff. And also, who have kids the same age as my daughter, not necessarily the same age as the baby. And so like the older kids can hang out. But yeah, it's definitely different being a second time mum. And I do think exactly what you said, like I'm so much more confident second time round that I wasn't,
yeah.
the first time I really like questioned everything that I was doing. I was so sleep deprived. Now I feel like I'm way more confident as a parent, but then I still also have those, worries that every parent has of like,
Yeah.
am I doing enough? So
I just
I
don't
don't think
think
that will
those
ever.
worries are ever gonna go away, eh?
No, exactly. Yeah.
I guess a little bit on that note of, like, things never going away and completely unexpected things happening, what has your biggest, like, "What the was that" moment been since becoming a parent?
Do you know, like, I don't know if this is like the ultimate one, but the first one that comes to mind was like when I was just giving birth to my daughter. So this was like, I was a
Mm.
first time mom, and everything, like your antenatal class, everything just really prepares you for like the birth. And for some reason in my mind, I thought that like, oh, I would like give birth to my daughter. And then like, I didn't really think about what would happen after that.
Yeah.
And you go
Yeah.
through this long labor of giving birth. And then I was like, oh, and then I'll like get to have a rest. And so the whole time I was like in labor, I was like, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. And I was like, oh, it'll be over soon and I'll like get to have a break. And then it was like, the labor was over and I was like so exhausted. It had been going on for like ages. And then they put this baby on me and they're like trying to get her to latch. And I'm like, oh shit. Like now I have to look after this baby for like the next 18 years. Like,
Yeah.
what? I kind of thought I was gonna like have a nap after this,
I know.
And then they're like doing the skin to skin and they're trying to get her to like latch for, feeding in the first hour or whatever. And I just remember like thinking like, what do I do now? I wasn't prepared at all. The antenatal class had really prepared me for like giving birth and the
Birth.
labor.
Yep.
And then nothing had prepared me for the fact that once I had finished giving birth, I was then a full-time mum and I did not get to have a nap after giving birth,
No.
And I was like, okay, this is it now. This is my life. So yeah, that was like an eye-opening moment where I was like, nobody talks about this. And then I guess that whole first year, it was like lots of little moments of literally nobody talks about this. Her sleep was so bad. Like I've mentioned that a few times, but like her sleep was so bad. Nobody talks about this,
Yeah.
nobody talks about like co-sleeping. It was like nobody talks about co-sleeping. I just felt like even like my identity having, a baby on me all the time, my body changing, not being able to like go out with my friends, nobody else could put her to sleep. Like she would only feed to sleep. And I just felt like trapped and I felt resentment towards my partner because he could go to the toilet in peace and not have to be like
Yeah.
having, taking the baby everywhere with him, and he could sit and eat his lunch like uninterrupted. I just remember being like, this is really hard, and like nobody talked about any of these things. Everybody just talked about the good stuff. And
Yeah.
that was like real that was like it was like it was like over the course of the year, lots of little moments of like, why did nobody tell me that this was what it was going to be like?
Yeah. I agree. I
And I think
so
that
agree.
that's the benefit of being a second time parent, is that like I now know. So I'm not surprised by stuff. When stuff happens, I'm like, oh yeah, like this is what it's like. But as a first time parent, I was like, what do you
And I think second time you have such perspective of like, this is going to go so fast. This is so shit right now. But in like 3 weeks' time, you're going to be like, oh, yeah,
yeah,
that was a phase and we're through it. You've got that perspective of how quickly baby time goes. But first time, you're like, oh my gosh, this is my life. And I'm never going to have a shower by myself again. And I'm never going
yeah,
to be able to go and see my friend. Like, you can get really caught in that, like, my
totally.
life as I know it is over.
And I think also the fact that like my life had changed so drastically in every single aspect. And my partner's life had also changed, but nowhere near as dramatically. Like his body was still the same. He was still going to work. He was still going to basketball in the evenings. He was still able
Yeah.
to like, go to the shop to pick something up by himself. He was still able to do all of these things. And my life was just like so drastically changed. And I wasn't prepared for how that would make me feel.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really strange dynamic shift for a relationship. For like, a heterosexual relationship, it's a very strange shift in dynamic and maybe not talked about enough. I don't know. I feel like maybe people are talking about it more. And I do think like credit where credit's due, the partners that show up are awesome, but I just think there's no way that like there can ever be
But
equilibrium in
even if
that.
the partners do everything, like even, Josh started doing the shopping because it was easier for him to go to the supermarket. I couldn't leave the baby. So, and I don't want to take her because it was during COVID times. And so it was
Yeah.
easier for him just to go and do the shopping. And then that kind of led on to like, I was so sleep deprived and tired and he started doing all the cooking. And even with him taking on more and more around the house and taking on like more and more of the mental load and everything else that comes with it, I still felt like resentful in that first year of how much my life had changed. I had just lost all my freedom. I'd lost my career. Like I loved my job before and I'd lost my career. I'd lost my freedom. My body was just changed in all these ways that like, I wasn't stoked about. Um And no matter how much cleaning or cooking he did around the house, I was like, I'm still pissed off, this is still unfair. Like,
You've been
yeah.
talking about it a bit this time around. It's a series that I love that you do about like finding your postpartum style. And I feel like
Mm,
that's a huge identity shift that no one talks about. Like after my son,
yeah.
my first, I looked in my wardrobe and I was like, I hate everything. Nothing fits me. I hate
Yeah.
it all. And nothing feels like me anymore. And the
Yeah.
exact same thing has happened to me the second time around. That
Yeah.
like I refound it after having him and having
Yeah.
my break and not being pregnant and after I'd stopped breastfeeding and all that stuff. And I like found it again and I was like, great, that's not gonna happen to me this time because I've like
Yeah.
refound my style. And then immediately the same things happened again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so relatable. And I think it's just a combination of the fact that like your clothes need to be practical in a way different way and
Yeah.
you live your life differently and your body has changed. Like each time you have a baby, your body shape changes, what you're comfortable in, your temperature, where they're wanting to be,
Yeah,
like everything.
everything.
And I just felt gross after I had my son, like, and this is why I started this series on TikTok, but it was like, I just felt really gross. Like, none of my clothes felt good. Like, I don't actually care how
Mm,
I look. I don't care if I walk down the street and people are like, she looks like a hot mess. I'm like, I do not care. What I care about is how do I feel? How do these clothes make my body
yeah.
feel? I was like, nothing is like the material is not working, the breastfeeding access is not working. I feel like hot, I feel like constricted, I feel like things are too tight and they don't sit in the right places anymore.
Mm.
So yeah, started this like TikTok series of like kind of documenting my outfits. And now they've just morphed into like I share what I'm wearing each day and I just chat about my life. It's not really so much about like trying to find my style anymore. But
I had just never seen
also,
anyone else talk about that experience. I had never seen
yeah,
anyone acknowledge that that happens when you're a mum, that like you look in your wardrobe and you're like, cool, I hate everything I own. Everything I own,
yeah,
I hate it.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's
so relatable. Like you
and
just
it,
want to throw everything out. And I had
yeah,
so many clothes from like before kids that now just feel like somehow too youthful. I'm like,
yes.
I'm like, oh, I can't wear that. Like,
Yeah.
and then I had a lot of clothes from like my kind of corporate life before that I'd wear to like work and wear to work events and stuff. And I look at them now and I'm just like, there's no way. But I still have them in my wardrobe because I'm like, maybe one day in the future, like I might have a job like that again. But then it's like, well, no, because I'm making my own company now and I get to be the boss of like what our dress code is. And our dress code
Yeah.
is like comfy mum clothes. And so I don't know when I'm ever going to wear these like kind of corporate
Mm.
outfits again. Like I really just need to part with them. But
I know
yeah,
I
hold on to
own
them for some weird
so
reason.
many clothes. My wardrobe is ridiculous right now because I've got everything from before I had kids, then from when I was pregnant with my son, then after my son, now then pregnant with my daughter, after having my daughter, and my body has changed shape and size and
Mm,
weight through all of those things. And
yeah.
I'm only like just now being like, actually, probably 90% of my wardrobe I will never wear again. And I need to like donate, figure out what to do with it because none of it, like, it's just sitting there taking up space.
Clothes. Like they don't want to sit in your wardrobe in the hopes that you might wear them one day and then in 10 years time you take them to the op shop, like I need to kind of part with them a bit more and yeah, but I'm trying to figure out what I want to wear before I do that so I can figure out like that was this whole series of
I was just thinking on the note of like after you had gave birth the first time that you were like, oh my gosh, I don't get a nap. It was like the biggest difference between first birth and second birth. We had the same midwives, by the way, for listeners. We both had the same midwives, Tammy and Georgia. Shout out to you guys. We love you so much. But I
they're
was
amazing.
truly just the best. But I was Georgia's official first birth, like after she got registered as a midwife. And it ended up being a really gnarly birth. Like so much stuff went wrong. Poor Georgia. It was a real baptism by fire. And then she had to go to her
Oh no.
graduation that afternoon and she was just like bleary eyed and the poor thing. But anyway, so I had a big postpartum hemorrhage after my birth and I was getting wheeled down to theatre and I was walking with Georgia and Georgia was like, are you okay? Like, how are you going? And I was like, do you know what? This is fine because I get to have a nap. I get to have a nap after this
Yeah.
birth, which I didn't get to have after my first. Like, they're going to knock me out and I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to get to have a little nap, which I wasn't going to get before. And Georgia was like, your dark humor is stressing me out. But I was like, actually, it's
But actually, like how good is a nap? Yeah, it sounds
actually,
like a
I will
very
take a
traumatic
nap
birth
right
though.
now. Yeah, look, we're working through it. We're working through it. But yes, it was, I was very grateful for the midwifery team that I had at the time.
Yeah, yeah, they were amazing.
They really were just the best, the absolute best, the best. Like, makes me sad for people that don't have midwives that they absolutely love and want to keep in their lives afterwards after
Yeah.
having that
Totally.
experience.
And also that you just trust so deeply. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't have Okay, sorry about that. I didn't have as
Fine.
traumatic a birth as you, but Ocean had like a shoulder dystocia. So he got his shoulder was like stuck coming out, and basically like, Tammy had to like put it a whole basically like
Emergency
her whole
bell.
arm up there, push the
Yeah.
emergency button, like all these people rushed in, and then she had to like put her arm up and kind of like push one of his shoulders back so that his shoulders did this, so he'd like
Wow.
slide out. And I just remember like being so grateful that it was Tammy, because I felt so safe with her. I was like, she is the best midwife probably in New Zealand, shout out to Tammy.
Biased, but yeah.
Ob-
I
Obviously
agree.
biased, but I was like, if there is somebody who can like, who knows what to do in the situation, it's gonna be Tammy, like,
Yeah.
and it's like, that's what you need when you're giving birth. You need to just have like that full confidence in your
Yeah.
midwife that it's like, no matter what happens right now, they are the best person to be helping me through this. And so I was just like, yeah, so grateful.
Yeah, love them. Shout out to them. And I hope that everyone is like has the same experience, because I feel like that's the maternity care that people deserve. But
Yeah,
it makes me so happy that people like that exist in New Zealand, because that's the kind of maternity care that everyone should get. All right, we'll move on to the final question. We're almost there. Osha, doing such a good job. But the last question, just to wrap up, if you were listening to this podcast the day you became a parent, what would you want yourself to hear?
I think I would, if I was going to tell my newly postpartum self something, I think I would say, just trust yourself more. Because in that first year, I just really, there's a lot of noise, and I wasn't sure like if I was doing the right thing, and especially around like sleep and co-sleeping. I think I'd just say like, trust yourself and like everything will be okay. And also it's going to go so fast. So just try and enjoy it. Like
Yeah.
it's going to be hard, but it's going to be fast. So just try and enjoy it and find joy, and like, don't stress over stuff so much,
Yeah.
you know? Don't worry about stuff so much. Just like, honestly, and this is still what I would tell myself today, if I'm
Yeah.
honest. Don't stress so much. Just like, enjoy it, have fun with your kids, say yes more. Say, sometimes we call it a crazy night, and we have pancakes for dinner, get into our pajamas and go for a walk around the block. Just say yes to more. Sometimes Josh and I will say no to something, and then we'll look at each other and be like, why are we actually saying no to this right now? Like, what is the
What's
reason?
a reason? It's one of my favorite pieces of advice that I got was save your no's. Like, if you're going to say
Yeah.
no, have a really good reason for it, because if your kid asks why, you want to be able to justify yourself. And I feel like being able to hold no's hold them back has been so good. And I feel like my son has such a fun childhood because of that piece of advice.
I also think like Josh and I often say to each other, like, there are only so many no's you can give in a day. So, use them wisely, because you run out eventually, and then everybody loses it.
Well, Renata, thank you so much for joining us today. It was actually just such a joy to have you here. So grateful, and like just absolutely love following you and watching what you're doing with the app and just your life. If you would like to do a quick plug for yourself, your app, your business, your content, now is the time.
So I've just got a sad baby. We're just almost at the end. What can I
He's
give
done
you?
so well.
Then look at this. Yeah, so you can find me on social media, Renata Roaming or Roam with Kids. Roam with Kids is like the business page. It's not my personal life. Renata Roaming is where I share more of the behind the scenes, my business journey, my parenting experience, more of just like me and my personality, I guess. I'm on TikTok as well. And come say hi. We do
Amazing.
meetups. If you're a mum in business, join our Mums in Business group. Yeah.
And we'll link all of that in the show notes as well. So if you're interested in any of that, it will all be linked in the podcast show notes. Renata, thank you so much. We're so grateful, and we can't wait to keep up with what you're doing.
No, I should also say before I go, the app is called Roam with Kids, and it's in the App Store and the Google Play Store. So that's probably like the main thing I should be plugging. I always forget. But
Yes.
thank you so much for having me on, Abby. It was awesome to talk to you.
So good.
Why do you parent like that?
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Why Do You Parent Like That? Why Do You Parent Like That is a podcast created and hosted by me, Abby Harrison. A big shout out to my nephew Thomas and my niece Frances for lending their voices to my jingle, and to everyone who is helping me with their expertise on podcasting while I figure this out. Any resources mentioned in today's pod will be linked in the show notes alongside our sponsors. Please follow Why Do You Parent Like That on your podcast platform of choice, and follow us on our TikTok and Instagram at Why Do You Parent Like That podcast for more behind the scenes and reveals of upcoming guests. If you have a story you think would be great to share, please send me an email at whydoyouparentlikeThatpodcast@gmail.com. Love you. Say it back.